time for the Improbability Engine after show. And Joe, this time we need to go and talk about politics again. We've neglected it for a while, but it's like the world is coming apart at the seams. And, you know, really, our moment of what every week could be something to do with politics, because
it was difficult not to make the moment of what about politics this week.
When have you ever seen some of the kinds of things that we're seeing? The President of the United States telling North Korea that we have an armada steaming toward their shores when it's actually going in the opposite direction. The President of the United States firing the FBI director because he's investigating him.
Yeah, it's a really dicey situation, and I think what you're going to see is this is a game of chicken between the president and the Republican Congress. Who blinks first on this one? He's going to keep pushing and try to hide this scandal that he just can't get away from. He's going to do everything in his power to not let it continue. He's already shown that he's willing to do that. He actively interfered in the House investigation. He's actively interfering into the FBI investigation. What else does he need to do before the Republicans in Congress wise up to this?
Oh, and yesterday, I believe it was, he met with the foreign minister from Russia.
Of course he did.
And American media were not allowed in, but Russian media were.
Of course, yeah.
How does that even begin to make sense or be something you can wrap your head around?
This all comes back to the same issues that have been fed by the Republican Party for decades. This anti-intellectual, anti-media, will substitute our facts for yours kind of a thought process. It's not new. This isn't new. It's all the same stuff. It's one of those, it's a situation where, like trickle-down economics, the push for trickle-down economics, we've seen it does not work. It does not work the way that they say it does. You can ask Kansas, right? You can look at the United States and realize it doesn't work like that. But because that is a central tenet of a political party's mantra going forward, it's a plank in their platform and has been since 1979, there's no way they can back off and say they were incorrect. I mean, that's what it is. And everything else be damned.
The truth be damned. I mean, the truth is, and it makes sense if you think about it, that high taxes on the wealthy, high taxes on corporations, increase wages for the middle class because they're faced with this dilemma. Do I give the money to the government, or do I give it to my workers and then pay less taxes as a result? I think I'm going to give it to the workers.
I think it's even bigger than that. If you're looking at it from a business standpoint and your choice is, all right, I can suck it up and pay a higher tax bill and get absolutely nothing for it. If you're an anti-tax person, that's how you look at taxes.
Right.
It's not true, but it's the perspective that you use. On the other side, well, I can invest in another distribution center and hire some workers, and I'll have something then. I can buy some land and build something. I can better my infrastructure. I can update this. I can spend more money on benefits because I know that I can take those off my tax burden.
I saw an article, and I'm not really enough of an expert in economics to be able to explain it to you, but it was in Bloomberg Business or Forbes, I forget which, and it was talking about how lowering corporate tax rates would hurt the big banks.
Yeah. Yeah, and the funny thing is about a lot of these economic packages is whenever you're looking at them, they're not overtly intuitive. You don't look at them and say, oh, this totally makes sense immediately. You know, the idea that, well, a rich person, if you give them more money, they're going to spend it. No, because they're only going to buy so many gallons of milk. They're only going to buy so many houses, so much stuff.
Right.
Whereas if you give the same amount of money to 5 families, they're going to spend that money because they need to buy 5 gallons of milk. It's one of those where you have to work your way through it.
The middle class has to spend most of what they make to get by and live.
Right.
The rich don't.
Right.
And so they save it.
Yeah, or they send it out overseas and they spend it somewhere else, and it never re-enters the economic cycle in the United States. And honestly, when we look at what we have in the White House now, it is the logical end to the thread that started 30 years ago.
But the thing that's most appalling is we're getting close to the fulfillment of what has been a cliche, and it's frightening. People have used the specter of Hitler in Nazi Germany in invalid ways for decades to try and scare the public. But this time, it's not invalid, because we have a president who is ignoring the law, who is corrupt, who is inciting violence at his rallies.
Yeah.
We have reporters being arrested for asking questions of public officials.
And anybody who says different is lying to you.
Yes. I mean, that's true.
That's the whole problem. Is anybody who tells you different is lying to you.
Yes. And we have the rise of white nationalism.
Right.
Again.
Yep.
It's appalling where this country is going.
And a lot of these are problems that we thought we had gone past, we had avoided. You know, whenever you look back in the 1930s, the rise of fascism, small f fascism, not the political party fascism, because you could be a National Socialist and still be a fascist. You have this, egomaniacal
and to be
leader.
Clear, fascism at its heart is government run for the benefit of corporations.
Right.
And
by its nature.
And the Nazi style of fascism also incorporates authoritarianism and racism and that kind of thing.
To justify the things that you do inside the government control, working with the big corporations.
Now, I did see a hilarious, I want to call it a skit, but it was actually true.
Oh, God.
These people were on a tour of Germany, and they wanted to see the concentration camp at Dachau. And so, they were there, but the German guards would not let them in. And then the head of the group says, and I assume this part is a joke, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He says, but then I told them we were Jews and they let us in.
Oh, that's terrible. That's a terrible joke. That's horrible. No, you know what? It really is sad. It's sad in this country now that we have the issues that we do from a political standpoint, and it's such a bad thing.
I feel terrible for your humor. No. I'm sorry. How you doing, Will?
I'm all right, Kerry. How are you?
So the biggest issue that we have is we're starting to fall into the areas of kleptocracy that would get you ridiculed in Central America and made a punchline in Africa and sub-Saharan Africa. And what we're seeing now is that there's a group of Americans who are gleefully skipping and jumping their way down the road to that point. And that's not okay. That's not acceptable, and we have to do something about it. A former aide to John McCain, who helped run his political campaign for president a few years ago, actually came out and said in the week that we're getting to the point now where the future of America lies in putting a Democratic Congress into power in 2018.
Yeah.
This is a Republican strategist who is saying this out loud.
And let's be clear about something. People should not think for a minute that electing a Democratic Congress in 2018 will solve everything for the middle class.
Absolutely not.
Will return America to where it was in the 1970s or 60s
or
50s or any of that.
And anybody who says that is lying to you.
They absolutely are. Because the truth is that the Democratic Party has moved so far to the right, that they're essentially what the Republican Party of the 80s was.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing that we have right now is we have no Republican leadership who is willing to stand up for the things that Republicans have stood up for since their founding.
Electing a Democratic Congress will put an end to the insanity, perhaps.
Yeah, and we'll actually get some answers as to how much collusion there was between the Trump campaign and foreign powers. The answer right now is there's definitely some. How high does it go? How much was it? How bad was it? And those are the answers we don't have right now. And honestly, the questions aren't going to be asked if the president can fire the head of the FBI who's investigating him with almost no real reason other than that. The argument being made, well, he shouldn't have said what he said about Hillary Clinton during the campaign. This is the same thing the president, he celebrated that when it came out. He praised Comey. He did it after he was elected. You can't say that that's a real reason for that because it doesn't hold water. You know, it's ridiculous. Don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining. It doesn't work like that.
And the thing with Trump is he doesn't care whether what he says is true or not.
No.
All he cares about is whether it serves his immediate purpose.
It's all about a means to an end, and that is dangerous. That is dangerous because that's the kind of person, you know, when I was younger there was talk, oh yeah, Bill Clinton, he's only bombing Bosnia, or he's only involved in Somalia so they'll quit talking about his scandals. It's wag the dog, wag the dog, wag the dog. This is the kind of guy who would actually do that, and honestly, I think he already has.
And I think people missed the fact that he sent 5,000 troops to Afghanistan this week.
Yeah, and here's the biggest issue that we've got as it comes to foreign policy with this guy. I cannot tell you what the thought process is that, you know, what is the foreign policy under Trump? The answer is, I have no idea.
And I don't think our allies or anybody else has any idea.
You know, you talk about he shot 59 cruise missiles into an empty parking lot in Syria.
And later, he said it was Iraq.
I mean,
I wish in that interview where, you know, he says it's Iraq and the reporter says, you mean Syria? I wish he had said something like,
no, sir.
You mean Italy.
Right.
Because he probably would have agreed to that.
Yeah, and this is the issue that we see with this. You know, we're seeing escalation, not de-escalation. We're seeing insanity. I mean, literally doing random things with no real reason behind them. You know, I mean, we've been testing ICBMs to deal with a country that can't feed itself, Will.
Right.
There have been rumors of an EMP burst above North Korea, a country that has very little electricity. It's one of those where you look at it and you go, come on, guys, let's really quit trying to add fuel to this fire. You're talking about a tin-pot dictator who will do whatever he has to stay in power.
Now, since the beginning of the Trump administration, probably back during the campaign, there have been people who have talked about whether or not he's stable, whether or not he's mentally well. And a lot of that, for a while, may not have been justified. But now you're getting even Republicans who are talking about, let's be clear, not members of the House or Senate, but Republicans who've been Republicans their whole lives, who've been conservative their whole lives, who are prominent figures, talking about the fact that he just does not seem to be mentally well, that he seems to, his faculties seem clouded, and he does not seem to be in full command of his emotions.
Well, the biggest issue as it comes to that is you then have to ask, okay, well, if he is not in full command of his faculties, who is surrounding him making up the power vacuum? And that's where it gets scary, because that's whenever you start getting into people who are not elected, who are not accountable, who absolutely don't have to answer for any of their decisions. And I think what you're seeing now is that, especially in the Republican-held Senate, they're trying desperately to fill the power vacuum that has been left by this White House. I think that's why you're not seeing Mitch McConnell push for more oversight or for more influence. I think he's doing it behind the scenes. I think he's trying to grab power himself. This is the big issue that we've got right now, is that for all the talk about the Constitution and for all the talk about small government and the ideology and being Republican, we're seeing an awful lot of people who are just taking the easy way and just increasing their power. They're doing exactly what they've accused every president of doing for the past 30 years. Oh no, it's okay if it's our guy. It's not okay if it's your guy. And that's what's going to have to stop. You look at what's going on in the news now, and it's abundantly clear that the White House cannot tell the truth.
That's true.
It just can't. If you gave the White House 5 chances, they would lie 5 times. There's nothing in their background that says they wouldn't.
And one of those times would be a lie they didn't need to tell.
Absolutely. I think that's the problem right now. The worst thing that ever happened, according to Republicans, is when President Obama said, if you like your insurance, you can keep it. Because that's the retort every time something comes up out of this president's mouth that is blatantly untrue. It's as if they want to justify every lie by that.
And the truth is that when Obama said that, it was not a lie. Now, did it turn out that some insurance companies canceled policies?
Absolutely.
Yes.
This is
but
the problem
he
with
had
relying on
he had no control over that.
Yeah.
All he was saying is that the new law, the Affordable Care Act, is not going to abolish your insurance policy that you currently have. And it didn't.
Right.
But insurance companies did abolish some of those policies.
Absolutely.
And then the government couldn't stop them from doing that. And regardless, he was talking about something that was to happen in the future. Trump's lies, and he can't talk for 60 seconds without telling one, are about things that have already happened, where there is an objective reality that he is lying about.
The most recent lie out of the White House is that that the Trump administration finally came to the point of firing Comey because of a letter sent by Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein. And the newest break on that was that Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, was about to resign because of that, because that's not what he had said. He didn't say he immediately needs to be fired. That was never on the table. And so if they were going to say that he did it, fine, he was going to resign. Well, he didn't resign, and now the president has come out and said, contrary to what the White House had already said, that he was going to fire him regardless of what the letter said from the Deputy Attorney General. This is where it starts getting really clear that it's about the Russia investigation and the ties of the Trump administration to Russia.
Well, and there are stories out that say that the letter was written at the president's request. He requested that he write the letter to give him grounds for firing.
Right.
Comey.
Let me be abundantly clear. It's within the president's rights and purviews to fire the director of the FBI.
Absolutely.
It is not ethical for someone in power to fire somebody
that is investigating
them. That is not ethical, and there's no argument that can be made about that. You could say, in this instance, and the way you get around it is to say, you know what? I don't have faith in Comey. Fine. Put out an independent investigation. An independent investigator can handle all the Russian stuff. Then you can fire the FBI head and hire whoever you want. Because now you've given an independent investigator with subpoena power the ability to do the investigation. You are actually making it better. But they won't do that. They just want to cut the head off of this investigation in the hopes that it dies and goes away. And it's not going to. It's not going to go away. You know, the Russian kleptocrats have infiltrated the American government. They are in the American government right now. What are they doing? I don't know, but I want to know.
And the tragedy of it all is that we have to focus on this garbage instead of focusing on what we need to do to get the country on the right track.
Absolutely. Every day we focus on this is a day that we don't look at the actual underlying problems facing the United States going forward. And they are numerous, and they are large, and they are looming. It is not something that's going to go away by ignoring it.
Yeah, there was a time when this country aspired to be great, when we built the interstate highway system, when we built the preeminent education system in the world.
Yeah.
And now we've gotten to the point, 15 years ago, we got to the point where we said, hey, we can't really afford to be great anymore, so let's just aspire to be good. Now we're to the point where we're saying we can't afford any of it. And we're sinking toward third world status.
We are. No, we're a rich country who can't afford the things that countries far poorer than us can afford.
Right.
And it all comes down to priorities.
Yeah.
What's the priority? Is it more of a priority that people who make $10 million a year don't pay taxes?
Watch what happens in Kentucky education over the next 4 years. This will be the first year for these private charter schools to start getting state money.
Well, and you can look no further than what's happened in Michigan, where Betsy DeVos comes from, and see how bad it failed. It cratered in Michigan. A similar system cratered at different points. The Michigan state system was one of the best education systems in the country. They were on par with the Massachusetts system. They had engineering programs. They had high-level technical expertise. Mathematics was amongst the highest in the country. And now you get these charter schools, and they're one of the worst. They're terrible. They are digging out.
And the charter schools, not only are they terrible, and many of them closed in the middle of the last school year.
Absolutely.
And students had to be sent to public schools
without
as a
funding.
result. Yes, without funding. And they've siphoned so much funding out of the public system that the schools are collapsing. And I don't mean the school system. I mean the buildings are collapsing.
They can't afford to do anything.
They can't afford to heat them in the winter.
Yeah, we have gotten to the point where we are okay with our public buildings falling in. And it's not just the schools. It's courthouses. It's all the vestiges of community property.
And what it comes back to is corporate greed.
Absolutely.
Don't let anybody convince you that the reason they want charter schools is because it's better for our kids. The reason they want charter schools is so they can take public money and give it to corporations that run those schools.
Absolutely. And in fact, they hired someone who's a billionaire because of charter schools. I mean, there's no two ways about it.
Anything else?
That's it.
That brings to a close this edition of the Improbability Engine.
The world's about to be destroyed. There's no point getting all annoyed. Lie back and let the planet dissolve.
answer to defeats. We thought that most of you were sleeping.